In the quiet heart of the forest, where the moon casts long, dancing shadows, lives a fox named Finley. Unlike other foxes, known for their cunning and bravado, Finley was timid. The night, for him, was a solitary affair, a time for quiet reflection, not bold adventures. He preferred the silent company of the stars to the rustling and chattering of other creatures. His world was small, safe, and entirely his own. But, as we all know, life has a funny way of pushing us out of our comfort zones, especially when we least expect it. One evening, a sudden, fierce windstorm swept through the forest. It wasn't just wind. It was a gale that howled like a hungry wolf, tearing at branches and turning familiar paths into a maze of fallen debris. The storm was a shock to the system, a jolt that woke the forest from its slumber, and in its wake, it left chaos. A small, eclectic group of nocturnal creatures found themselves lost and disoriented. There was Barnaby, a wise old owl whose nest had been destroyed, Squeaky, a young field mouse separated from her family, and a trio of bickering badger brothers who couldn't agree on which way was home. They were all scared, huddled together under the roots of a great oak, their usual confidence shattered. It was in this moment of shared vulnerability that they turned their gaze to the one creature who knew the night's secrets best, even if he didn't know it himself. They looked at Finley. The fox, whose instinct was to shrink into the shadows, suddenly found a dozen desperate eyes fixed on him. Panic fluttered in his chest. Lead him. The thought was absurd. He was a follower, a watcher, not a guide. But as he looked at Squeaky, trembling with cold and fear, and saw the desperation in Barnaby's normally knowing eyes, something shifted within him. It wasn't a wave of courage or a sudden surge of confidence. It was quieter than that. It was a flicker of empathy. He knew these woods. He knew the safe passages, the hidden hollows, the streams that whispered directions if you listened closely. His solitary wanderings had made him an unwitting expert. His vulnerability, his quiet observation, was actually his greatest strength. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Finley took his first step as a leader. He didn't give grand speeches or bark orders. His leadership was different. It was born of listening. He listened to Barnaby's knowledge of the high ground, to the Badger brothers' surprising strength for clearing paths, and to Squeaky's keen sense of smell that could detect danger from afar. He didn't command, he connected. He wove their individual talents into a cohesive whole, like a tapestry. He encouraged the Badgers to work together, used Barnaby's wisdom to navigate, and kept Squeaky close, reassuring her with a gentle nudge. Their journey through the changed landscape was filled with challenges. They had to cross a newly formed, fast-flowing creek and navigate a thicket of thorns that seemed to have sprung up overnight. With each obstacle, Finley felt his own fear, but he also felt the weight of their trust. He learned that leadership isn't about being fearless. It's about acting despite your fear. It's about showing others that it's okay to be scared, as long as you keep moving forward, together. He used his quiet nature not to hide, but to observe, to anticipate, and to find clever solutions that a louder, more boisterous leader might have missed. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, they finally reached the edge of the woods, a familiar, safe clearing. A sense of relief and accomplishment washed over the weary group. They weren't just a band of lost animals anymore. They were a team, a fellowship forged in the dark. The Badger brothers had stopped bickering, Barnaby had a newfound respect for the small fox, and Squeaky looked at Finley with pure admiration. They had made it, thanks to the timid fox who had found his voice in the silence. Finley looked back at the path they had traveled. The forest was still his home, but it looked different now, filled not with shadows to hide in, but with memories of shared courage. He realized that true strength isn't about the noise you make, but the impact you have. It's about empowering others, fostering unity, and discovering that even the quietest among us can guide others through the darkest of nights. Finley was still a quiet fox, but he was no longer just a solitary wanderer. He was a leader. This story reminds us that leadership comes in all forms. Sometimes it's the quietest person in the room who has the most to offer. It's about empathy, listening, and finding strength in vulnerability. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the heart of the wild. See you next time.